Welcome to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is Matt Farrand, worship pastor from Vineyard of the Rockies in Fort Collins, Colorado.
What up, Matt Farrand?
Hey.
Hey, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
I don't think you've ever been on the pod.
I have not.
I'm
excited to be here.
Welcome to the Ferment, my friend.
Ferment.
And we're not even Zooming.
We're not. We are face to face
in Colorado.
Sharing air.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
Hey, I am really glad you're on the pod. Honestly, it's probably been late. You should have been on earlier. I'm glad we finally did this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to do some stuff today. This conversation is a podcast episode that's sitting inside of the theme that we're working on right now, which is leading better worship. I probably should have come up with a better name, but that's all I had.
That works, man.
Yeah, leading better worship. And what I'd like to discuss with you this episode is just, how to do administration and systems, because it's that piece of leading worship that we don't often think about initially. We think about standing on stage, playing piano, playing guitar, and directing the band, singing in the microphone, having a moment with God.
All the upfront stuff.
Yes, but there's all the back end stuff that comes. Well, how did the people who were playing with me this morning know to come?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that. But before we do that, would you just tell a little bit of your story? Because you've never been on the pod before, so we want to make some room for that. Like, who are you? Where'd you come from? And what was your life like growing up?
I'm a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
Pastor's kid. Grew up Pentecostal pastor's kid in central Illinois.
All right.
And
you're a Midwesterner.
Yeah. And I had no idea that it wasn't normal, but it was a really large church. It was a church of 1,500 in a town of 35,000 in the early 80s. I mean, that's late 70s, early 80s. I mean, that's kind of the mega mode of that time. So it was a really fun church to be part of. There were a lot of pastors on staff, a lot of pastors' kids running around.
Yeah.
It was an amazing community. We had a lot of concerts, like we had Keith Green through, and everybody came through, played our church. It was amazing. And it was a really, really killer community to be part of.
So as a kid, you when you think back on it, you have good memories.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, I kind of began to wake up to some undercurrents that were happening at the church. Like, kids are really perceptive. And I started picking up on some things. And when I was 10 years old, the church experienced a split. The pastor was fired. The following day, the remaining staff were all fired. And the church split down the middle. And we went from this massive community overnight to just being kind of ghosted, just on an island alone. And my dad, the whole staff really kind of got blacklisted denominationally. It was just a little hot. It probably wasn't an official blacklist. It was just a little hot.
Yeah.
And so we moved to a really small town. The town was smaller than the church that we were moving from. And Dad was the senior pastor for the first time in my life. He had been an associate. And that was really hard. Up until that moment in my life, everything was about basketball. And I think the Lord knew I didn't have a future in the league. So I moved to the sticks.
Most don't.
The middle of nowhere in southern Illinois. And that's when I got into music. Like, there was nothing to do. There was no basketball hoop in town.
How old were you?
I was 10.
Yeah.
And the church, we lived in the parsonage, and the church board wouldn't let my dad put a basketball hoop up on the church property. And so I started playing. That was all there was to do. And it was like a gift.
Yeah. What was the first instrument you played? Saxophone. Okay.
Yeah. I played sax. That's what I started.
Did you play like in the school band?
Yep. Yeah. Started in the band, played. That was my first instrument on the worship stage.
Okay.
Just playing with my mom. E flat, alto sax. You could play the tenor line out of the hymnal just as it reads. It works because of the bass clef, and I read it like the treble clef, and it just transposed it for me. And so just started playing the tenor line, and just terrible. It was a little church, and everybody loved me, and they had grace
they're like,
for
look
me.
at that, little Matt with his saxophone.
And then we moved again. A couple of years later, we moved to Iowa, and my dad pastored there until last summer. He retired. Finally, he was there for more than right at 30 years.
Wow.
A little rural church in Iowa in the county seat. And that's where I cut my teeth leading worship. Me and my mom. And she would conspire against me. I didn't really know it, but she would say, hey, Matt, in 6 weeks we're doing this thing and it really needs bass guitar. And then she would just like leave me sweating it, and I would scramble and like learn this one song on bass guitar. And she, from middle school on, kind of systematically made sure that I was at least a little bit proficient on everything on the worship stage.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't talk about it until afterwards, and I was like, you are
Yeah.
either a genius or manipulative, like, or both.
So
I don't know. She was
your mom was just tricking you into playing everything.
Yeah, she got me.
Okay, so when did you come to the Vineyard?
Yeah, so I was part of an Assemblies church plant. Grew up AG, went to AG Bible College, my wife and I both. And I was part of a church plant. And we were on the early side of the move team and lived in the town for about a year before launch. And then we were with the plant for about a year after. And it all kind of went sideways. And we ended up isolated, left the church plant. We were 1,000 miles from nearest family and friends. And it was brutal. We were really burned out and crispy. And at that point, I was not sure that I'd ever heard the voice. Like, we thought we had heard from God to do this church plant, and then
it just didn't work.
It's just mushroom cloud, right?
Yeah.
And so I just had a lot of doubts. For the first time in my life, I was not interested in church, but I still wanted to go enough to like have a phone conversation with my dad without having to lie to him, and we'd talk about church. It's what we do. And so I don't know why. Well, I always had awareness and affinity for Vineyard. Like, growing up, cut my teeth in worship in the 90s. That was it. Like, that was the jam. I'd get all the cassettes, all the books. That's what I wanted to do. Mom wanted to do the integrity stuff from the Spiral Bound or the Hosanna, and I wanted to do the Vineyard jams. Yeah. And there was a Vineyard Church plant in our town, and we hadn't been to church in a couple months. And I said, my wife's name's Teri. I said, Teri, let's go to the Vineyard, and I don't know, maybe we'll go. And they had planted right around the time of our other church plant project. And that little church, like, we walked in, little church with Aaron and Sharon McCarter.
Shout out Aaron and Sharon.
The McCarters are awesome. And man, that place, we found so much healing, so much family, really, friendship. And the Lord did.
I mean, that's where I met
stuff.
you.
Yeah. So it was crazy just how I'd gotten kind of a 9-to-5 job. And the last thing we knew, when the church plant blew up, we had just started the adoption process. Both of our kids are adopted. And so we didn't know what we were doing, but we're like, well, let's stay here through this one adoption, and then we'll kind of reevaluate. And we walked into the Vineyard for the first time. The people we met right inside the door were holding this little baby girl, and they started talking to us. And they said, oh, she was adopted. And it was like this moment of like hope embodied, because we were just in a dark spot.
Yeah.
And so they became dear friends, started going to their small group, and the Lord just brought a lot of healing. I thought we were going to be out of ministry for long term, maybe forever. And we ended up on staff there, both my wife and I. And
you did worship, right?
Decade, yep, did worship.
Yeah.
That's kind of the nutshell, how I came to the Vineyard.
Yeah.
Found out, like so many people's stories, like, oh, this is home. This is my people.
These are my people. I didn't know it, but they were out there.
This is it.
That's really cool. So how many years have you been doing stuff in the Vineyard now?
Oh man, I think 15.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be around that number.
Yeah,
that's awesome, Matt.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, hey, here's what I want to do with you today. We already mentioned it at the top of this episode, but I want to talk about like admin and systems. You're somebody in our Vineyard worship world who has a reputation for being a team builder and like a strong worship administrator. Like, you're a worship leader. We all know that. We know that you're like a utility player. That was already in your story as well. But a lot of people have said in various rooms, if you want to get your worship team straightened out, you just got to talk to Matt Farrand. So talk to me about where that impulse comes from in you. Is it born in a part of your story, or is it just the way God's wired you? Talk to me about that a little bit.
I do think it's part wiring, for sure. But I think when it really took off for me and when I really started taking it seriously was during a time when the Maryville Vineyard was experiencing a lot of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And it became really clear to me that the worship ministry was going to be a bottleneck for our organization, for our church. That I was not going to be able to continue doing everything that I was doing at the scale that was going to be required in the coming months and years.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the future and I'm dreaming with my pastor.
Yeah.
And we're talking about what's coming and where we're headed, and things are good. And God is bringing growth kind of maybe in spite of us.
Yeah. No, and that's the way it happens.
Bringing growth, right?
Yeah. When you get momentum, you get momentum.
Yeah. And
it's a wild thing.
And you just ride it.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening. And we had a really tiny building, as you do, and started adding services. And I not just the worship leading portion, but that was the most acute. Like I would be hoarse till Wednesday. You know, and the cupboard's bare. Like, I need help.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the bottleneck. Like I'm going to kind of die trying here. And so it was kind of a moment, like I imagined the moment before, if you watch The Office, there was a moment before the show when Michael Scott was like an amazing paper salesman, and then he gets promoted and now he's the branch manager.
That's right.
And it's questionable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a killer paper salesman.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I found myself there.
Yeah.
Like what brought me thus far was being a doer.
Yeah. Good worship leader.
Doing all the things, executing and doing everything, figuring out what the church needed, learning how to do it and doing it.
Yeah.
And that could no longer be the gig.
Yeah, you just couldn't do everything.
Yeah. So that was the moment I think it really flipped for me of, okay, well, my whole approach is going to have to change.
Okay. Well, let me dig in here just a minute, because a lot of times we think about musical ability when we think about leading worship, but the truth is, like, having a healthy worship culture, it's really heavily dependent on systems. It's like organization, administration, because so many people serve in the worship department. You know, especially when you think about. You got worship leaders, you got drummers, you got bass players, you got BGVs. But then you also have tech people, or at least most churches kind of put that all together.
Yeah,
you got
it's
your
all
tech,
kind of under the umbrella, right?
Yeah, you got your video people now. You got somebody on the live stream.
Shout out to the live stream.
Shout out to the live stream. I mean, I would imagine most Vineyard churches now don't just have one person running front of a house. They've got a live stream person too. So now we've multiplied this thing.
We're using 2
soundboards
engineers every Sunday.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So give me a vision. So give me a vision, Matt, for what good administration can be. What can it do for your worship ministry, and what are some of the results of good systems?
Yeah, I think that really what we're talking about here is building the structures that are necessary for a team of artists and technicians to thrive, building the systems that they need to, and that's as much culture as it is organization or administration. Yeah. But it's setting tone. It's saying, hey, people like us do things like this. This is how we roll. Yeah. And we're prepared, and we do this, and this is when we do it, and this is how we do it, and training up, sharing that culture, and then letting really talented people that God has put in the body find their spot and thrive and grow and bloom. That's the jam. That's what we're talking about when we're saying worship administration. So I think sometimes, particularly artistically inclined folks, like hear the word administration and immediately
it's something about it turns us off.
Peace out. Like, you're talking about spreadsheets. I am out. And there's a spreadsheet or two involved. But what we're really talking about here is tending to the structure for the vine to grow on. You and I had a conversation years ago about a trellis.
That's right.
And grapes growing on a trellis. And it was at a retreat one year. The Lord spoke to me about it, and I didn't know anything about it. And so I sat down and I was like, tell me all about a trellis.
That's right.
And you talked to me about it. Yeah. And I don't want to overplay the metaphor here in the vineyard, but I mean, tell me, Adam, how do grapes do without a trellis?
Well, they don't, Matt. Yeah, no, but basically the idea here, and I don't think it's overplaying the metaphor. I think it's a good one, and it's a good one for worship leaders to sort of put in their back pocket and think about when they consider what they're doing. You know, a grapevine is going to grow. Mm-hmm. It's going to vine. It's going to get big.
Yep.
It wants to grow. It's going to push stuff everywhere, and then a part of that growth is actually going to be fruit. Fruit is going to set, and it's going to grow. But if there's no trellis, then all of those vines and all of that fruit is going to lay on the ground. Mm-hmm. And if the fruit is on the ground, two things happen. Insects can get it, and it will mold and mildew.
Yeah.
And at the end, even if your vine stays alive through the whole year, when it comes to harvest time, you'll have a vine, you'll have no fruit.
Yeah.
So you have to have a trellis, and the trellis gets that vine up off the ground, mm-hmm. and it gets the canopy of the vine up into the sunshine, in the light. Yep. It gets the fruit in a spot where it can be harvested. It keeps the roots in the ground. Mm-hmm. You know, so the metaphor actually, in my mind, actually can't be overwrought.
It's kind of the picture here.
Yeah, it is.
And there's space involved in this, right? Mm-hmm. All the fruit isn't on top of each other.
No.
It's space. There's space.
Yeah.
And there's air and there's light, and it's not laying on the ground in the shadows and covered up. And that's what we're talking about here. So there are these systems, these basic systems, and really they're, I mean, almost universal, especially in the vineyard context that we have in North America. There's just some universal systems.
Yeah, talk to me about some that you think are maybe top shelf important, universal things to get right.
You mentioned it right up top. Like, how do the team members know when and where to show up?
Yeah.
You're going to have to do a schedule.
Yeah.
And doing that schedule, like nobody's dreaming about doing the schedule.
Yeah.
Right? But doing the schedule on time in a consistent way blesses your whole team.
Yeah.
And it allows people to know when to be, where to be, and it avoids frustration. It sets the expectation. It defines how people can succeed in this context. And so that's a huge one.
And it keeps us from making too many Saturday night phone calls.
Yeah. Those.
I mean, they sometimes
last
happen.
minute scrambles, man.
Yeah, that's just not what we're looking for.
You can't live there long term.
No.
And if you're not doing the schedule proactively and using it as a tool that's a blessing to the whole team, mm-hmm. then the kind of scramble that you're living in will eventually come for you.
Yeah, like, I mean, it makes people frustrated, and it makes you feel anxious.
Yeah. Like, you're going to lose team members over it. You may not make it for the long haul because of the anxiety level. And it seems like such a simple thing. Yeah. It seems like no big deal. But I'm telling you, when I do the schedule the same every time at the same time. And I've been serving Vineyard of the Rockies in Fort Collins for 4.5 years. The team members there know when they're going to get the schedule and how it works.
How far out do you schedule?
So here's the thing, Adam. Yeah. I used to want to schedule like 2 months at a time or 3 months at a time. Yeah. And what I found is, like, somebody will click the easy yes, but they don't really know. So then when it comes time, it's really a no.
Yeah.
Like, it's really a no.
Yeah, I've got a thing.
Yeah. So now what I do is on the 15th of the month, or maybe a day or two before it, if that falls on a weekend or something.
That's right.
By mid-month, I'm sending the next month out.
Yeah.
So I'm asking people to schedule their lives 2 to 6 weeks out. That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
And it always goes out the same way. So that's the way I roll with it.
Yeah.
And like, I've talked about that with the team. I can say it, but more than that, I actually do it.
You do it. Yeah.
Actually send it out.
Yeah.
And to the point, I mean, there was one month where things were a little squirrely and it was hard, and I didn't send it out on the 15th. I think I sent it out on the 17th, and I had like multiple team members texting me if I was okay.
Yeah, Matt, are you alive?
Like, is it
you in jail?
You good?
Yeah.
Like, everything okay?
Yeah.
And so that kind of consistency, I can't overstate. It's just a big deal.
Yeah. So talk to me about this. If you make the schedule and everybody pushes yes, and it's 2 to 6 weeks out,
we're living the dream.
Yeah, you're living the dream. But then somebody on that 6th week, it rolls around. They're like, oh yeah, I definitely can't do that. Talk to me about how you do replacements.
Yeah.
Do you expect people to get their own replacement? Do you tell them to call you?
Yeah.
What's your thinking there?
So a lot of times when somebody's brand new to the team, I'll I'll help them with replacement. They don't have the kind of relationship with the other people that are in their slot that maybe they will have eventually, where they can text somebody and feel totally comfortable or whatever. So I'll help them. But generally speaking, if we can at all do it this way, you're going to tell me, hey, I've arranged a switch. As it turns out, I can't make it on that week 6, but I already have a swap figured out.
And then
so we're covered.
just let you know.
So that's the dream.
Yep.
Or they'll text me and say, do I need to do a swap? Like, should I find somebody?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes.
You know, so that's living the dream. And that doesn't always happen. And it depends person to person and stage of life and all that stuff. But that's living the dream. Yeah.
No, that's good. Okay. So you were talking about foundational systems.
Yep.
Schedule.
Yep. Schedule.
What else?
Set lists and repertoire.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. Because
Huge.
this is not just something that's functional, but as soon as you say set list and repertoire, you're actually getting into values now.
Yeah, yeah.
So
these are big questions, especially in the repertoire world.
Yeah.
But set list, I mean, it just comes down to like, are your musicians finding out the songs on Sunday morning when they arrive at church?
Yeah.
You know what? It's 3 chords and the truth. You can pull that off.
Yeah.
Like you can get away with that indefinitely. It's okay if that's the system and everybody knows it. But maybe a little bit of advance notice will
How much advance notice
help
do you
somebody.
like to give?
So I really love giving people a weekend before their Sunday.
Yeah.
So if we can post a set on Friday, not the Friday 2 days before.
The Friday, 9 days before.
Yeah. And then they have 6 days before our Thursday midweek rehearsal, Thursday night. And so that allows people to personally prepare.
Yeah.
And I'm really collaborative. I always co-lead.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not co-leading on a Sunday, it's almost a missed opportunity. I can't even think of a time unless I'm, anyhow.
Yeah.
So I'm always co-leading. That means set building is very collaborative, which means that I'm not totally in control of the set list timing, right? I've had to, like, I'm balancing these conflicting values.
Yeah, we want to get the set list out, but I also want to co-lead.
But so that's the goal, and we communicate that. Like we'll post it on a Sunday, you know, like Drop Dead is midday Monday, and I'm feeling the heartburn at that point.
You're like, it's got to go out.
Like we got to get this. I might assign you a song at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about set list building with another person. How do you think and feel about that? Because that can go a lot of different ways.
Yeah. It can be dicey, but I think it's really helpful. What I've found is that I share a little bit of my pastor's heart for the Sunday.
Because you know what's happening that Sunday. What's the message?
Yeah, which speaks to some other pre-existing communication systems that are in place. But I share a little bit about the pastor's heart and his text. Like whoever's preaching that Sunday, I'm going to share their text and their kind of big idea.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to share, like, so I'm thinking of this song.
Yeah.
And I've found that the difference between just seeding the pot with one song and just sending the theme and scripture is a really big difference.
Yeah.
So I try to I'll usually send, I'm thinking this song.
Yeah.
And then that just gets the ball rolling. And I'll ask questions like, what songs are on your heart?
Yeah.
And I want them to send me more than we need.
Yeah.
So if they're leading 2 songs, I want them to send me 4.
Yeah, and then we can kind of choose
together.
And
now we can kind of riff back and forth, or if they're just starting out building sets, I might build the set and then tell them what I did.
Yeah.
And encourage that. But that's set building, and then that's got to all be done and happening in time to tell the team how to execute, how to prepare. And then the other half of this is probably the bigger half, the values half, and that's repertoire.
Yeah. Talk to me about how you feel about that, because sometimes I pop in on the Vineyard Worship Leaders Facebook page, and I don't know, was it a month ago?
This is a really common question.
It comes up a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, was it a month ago? Maybe you saw it. Somebody was like, how many songs should be in our universe, right? And somebody was like, well, we have 100.
Yeah.
And then somebody else was like, well, we got like 25 at a time, and we redo it every quarter, and I was like, yeah. So you see a lot of different feelings there.
Yep. And so what I would say is I think there are a lot of like people who I really look up to and respect who do it different than I do.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
What I would say is don't do it on accident.
Have a reason.
Have a reason.
Think it.
Have a system. Set some boundaries. Set some guardrails on your highway.
What are some guardrails that someone might set up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, Adam, there's more worship in our world today.
It's too many songs.
There's so many. There are more songs that are good, like theologically sound,
Sure.
hooky. My church could sing them,
Yeah.
and they released today. There's
Yeah.
more than I can use in
Ever.
the remaining life I have.
Yeah.
So if we're dealing with a pool that is
Too big.
inexhaustible
Yeah.
and too big, and we can't do all the songs, then it stands to reason that we're going to do a selection of the songs. So curating the selection of songs is probably a big deal. It's probably real important.
Yeah, and even in the way you're framing that there, part of what you're saying is, if there's too many, we need to cut it down. And if we need to cut it down, we need to make our choices based on something.
Yeah. So
Rather than
how are we going to decide? What are the metrics?
Yeah,
Is it the YouTube plays?
Yeah.
Is it
Well, even to what you're saying here, if we don't have a matrix by which we're choosing the songs, what we're really saying is, then our repertoire is just whatever I like.
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which
I'm going to feel it.
Yeah, maybe that's good.
Maybe that's all right.
Yeah.
Depends on the context.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably a series, like you're saying, a matrix that you can look at as lenses that you're evaluating songs. And I've learned that it's really helpful to not do this in isolation.
So you mean include your worship leaders in it?
Yeah. So if I'm co-leading and if I'm building a team of worship leaders and I'm putting songs in their mouth, we talk all the time about putting songs in the mouth as a congregation. I think that's a real thing. But I'm going to ask a co-leader to lead this jam with me and sing it. They're going to have to learn it and execute it. So including them and including them in the thought process, in the values and the vision behind it, in the decision making.
Yeah. What are some of the values or matrix that you use to build your song universe?
Yeah. So we have a 40-song repertoire, and I've found that really works well for us. We break our own rules sometimes. It's
jazz.
Right. It's
you know
here
the
to
rules.
serve us.
Yeah, you know the rules and you can break it if you need.
We're not serving the rule. The rule's serving us. What I'll do is kind of ask for input, and we have a collaborative playlist that other people can add to, or they'll just text me a link, Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube link, and this is jam, this is amazing. Check this out. And we'll all kind of be listening to this collaborative playlist. And then we add about 10 songs a year.
And so does that mean you take 10 out?
That means we take 10 out.
Yeah. And that's part of the collaboration as well.
It's got to hurt a little. If it doesn't hurt,
you're
not really doing it right. You
Yeah.
know? And so, there are songs that I love, like a lot of times songs that are a little bit older are the ones that start to fall out of rotation and begin to creep down, the movie Inside Out, and the memories are fading. They end up in and that starts to happen with some top 40 jams, some songs in our repertoire, and they're the ones that I have moments with them.
Those are my songs.
I have memories. And then we say goodbye to those. And they're soft retired. So every once in a while we'll reach back and grab those. But we add 10 a year. And
do you do it all at once?
We add one at a time. And we do it. So in Colorado, where I'm at right now, people who really, really love Jesus and really, really love the Vineyard, they come to church twice a month.
That's right.
That's Colorado culture.
I think that's American
I think that's
culture.
More and more post-COVID, that might be lower for us. I don't know, but that's what we're facing.
Do people in Colorado even come to church in the summer?
Dude, it's just too beautiful.
It's too nice, right? It's like we're going out.
I'm headed.
See y'all in October.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So if that's true, and they're coming not even half the time, that means I've got to do a song 4 or 5 times in a row for even the simple majority of my church to even hear it once, right? And even have a chance. And part of this repertoire conversation, I'm bouncing around a bit, but part of this repertoire conversation really is a way to prefer the congregation and choose accessibility for them.
Yeah.
By limiting the number of songs that we're doing on a Sunday, the church family really has a chance of coming in and knowing the jams and not having to stare at the screen and learn. They can enter into a place of worship and they can go with us. They can go with us. So it's an accessibility decision, really valuing that and saying, well, I love all the songs. I love all the jams, but I'm going to lay my preference down and choose them. And that serves the musicians on the team.
They don't have to know hundreds of songs.
Yeah, like they don't have to know all the songs. They have to know. I literally have a playlist on all the major streaming platforms. We share it with the church and the worship team.
Yeah.
So when somebody new to the team comes on board, I show them the playlist and I say, this is it, man.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's sort of like, I mean, it's a little more like a cover band than I want to admit, but that's what it is. But our homegrown stuff is on there. All the Vineyard jams we do is on there. The hymns we do, all the other streams that we're pulling, those 40 songs, learn this.
Do you have any sort of like matrix of what all, in terms of type of song you want on there?
So tempo is a factor.
Yeah.
We're always struggling for
Up-tempo openers.
anything north of 80 BPM, you know, like
that isn't cheesy.
Yeah, that's not campy.
Yeah.
You know, that's just such a quest. I try and write them and then I realize why there's not very many of them.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And so we're like, tempo is a factor. We're considering that. We're looking at theme. Like sometimes we're picking a song because it's hand in glove with a sermon series that's coming up.
That's right.
And we need to sing this. Like we're going to sing the sermons and people are going to wake up humming it on Monday morning.
Right.
So that's a factor and that's amazing. The theme, a lot of times, like I literally just had this conversation with like our circle of worship leaders. I realized that a couple of the songs we had retired in a row dealt with the cross and the blood of Jesus. And I'm looking at the remaining top 40 rep.
We don't have that.
And I'm like, oh boy. I mean, I think we got one left. We need, everybody scour the earth. We need some amazing songs that talk about the blood of Jesus.
Yes.
And we need to add those. So sometime in the next 6 months, we're going to add one or two of those and get them back into the rep. So that's a factor. We consider the song source. It matters.
Yeah.
That's one of the columns of data that we're looking at. Where did this song come from?
Yeah, that's right.
Is it homegrown? Is it Vineyard?
Yep.
Is it another stream? If it's another stream, tell me more. Talk to me more about that. And we sing songs from all over the place and they're amazing, but it still kind of matters.
Yeah.
It still kind of matters.
Yeah.
So that's all, I mean, that's kind of a small sample of what's on that matrix.
No, I love that. And then I heard you say the word hymn a moment ago. Are you trying to keep a hymn or two in there as well?
Yeah. So at any given time in the top 40 of our repertoire, there are about 20 songs that are Vineyard or homegrown originals. Yes. There are about 8 to 10 hymns.
Whoa. Okay, that's bigger than I thought.
And then the balance is other modern streams.
Yeah, like worldwide.
Yep. But we've Adam, we got to sing Come Thou Fount.
Yeah.
Like
I don't disagree.
We need to sing Prone to Wonder.
Yeah.
Lord, I feel, like there's just some of these classic hymns that we need to sing. And particularly, it is a little bit bigger than historically I've used, but the church where I'm serving was planted by the boomer generation, and there's a large contingency of boomers in our church who I really, really love.
Yeah.
And they love the hymns.
Yeah, it's just about making some room and being hospitable to the people who are at church with you.
So that's our balance. And it kind of flexes and moves, and it's not rigid, but that's about the balance.
Yeah, I mean, at our church, we have a slightly different system, and I won't go into all of it, but with respect to set, and this doesn't always happen, but Glenn and I have chatted this on numerous occasions, like a perfect worship set at our church would be an original song written at home, something from the Vineyard family, either US, UK, Canada, whatever, just something from the Vineyard family, something from the global church, Build My Life. Like something the whole church is singing right now, right? And if we could touch those bases, if we could get all of that into a worship set,
that's it.
Yeah, and if it happens to overlap with the message in some way or what's happening in the life of the church, then we know, man, we feel like we really did something on that Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about this. What are some ways that people who mostly see themselves as a creative or artist, but maybe they kind of like bristle at the idea of systems, right? How can that real creative artistic type, what are some on-ramps to growth there?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it, but you need it.
I like that.
It's okay if you don't like it.
Yeah.
And I mean, a painter doesn't usually build the walls of the gallery where their work is displayed. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to build those walls.
Yeah.
We got to hang this painting.
Yeah.
And it's going to be beautiful. But the painter doesn't usually build the walls. Like, so find somebody to build the walls for you. You know, like let's build a team. Empower somebody in your worship orbit or in your church to build structures that will allow the art to shine. Somebody in your church, somebody in your community will come alive for this stuff.
That's right.
The way you feel about music, they feel that about spreadsheets. They do.
I know. I mean, it's really funny. At first, I thought, there's no way this is true. But then eventually you meet
somebody.
Yeah, you meet somebody who has a real gift of administration, and they just enjoy, they enjoy the order.
Yeah.
You know, they enjoy building a thing that just works, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And after I met a few of those people, I thought, oh, okay, I need to reevaluate everything
real.
I thought was true, right?
It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible even says administration is a gift.
Yeah.
Right?
Come on.
Yeah. A gift of the Spirit. It's like the Spirit is at work.
Yes. Come Holy Spirit.
Bringing administration. Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Like if that's you and you just lean heavy into the art world.
Yeah.
And you like this just makes the hair on your neck stand up and you cringe.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. But I think having the awareness that this needs to be a reality in your ministry and in your life, and you need help with it, and getting somebody around you and then empowering them. And that's probably going to mean that they are going to ask you to do something at a time you don't want to do it, and something you don't even want to do, and you're going to have to do it because you've actually empowered them.
Yeah.
You've actually empowered them.
Yeah. They're going to build a system, and
you're going to have to live in the system.
We're all going to live in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but you'll be better for it. Going back to the trellis, there'll be more fruit.
That's right. Okay. Well, talk to me about this. I had a conversation even this week while we were here in Colorado. I had a conversation with Ted Kim, and really it was a conversation about building culture. And you even mentioned culture earlier in our little talk here. One of the things I was talking to Ted about, and I just want to throw it to you, given the conversation we're having, is thinking beyond plugging holes on Planning Center, right? Like this really speaks to the idea of culture.
Yeah.
How do we do this right? How do we get a song set universe? How do we get our schedule right? You know, make sure the set lists are going out on time, caring about that kind of thing, but not falling into the trap of just, I plug holes on Planning Center.
Yeah, man.
And our culture is kind of, it's so tilted towards efficiency that things like humanity get lost somewhere in the mix.
Yeah. It can quickly turn there, right? And the grind of Sunday's coming at them. I don't know if you knew this, but
I do. I've got
today's Thursday. And
I've got a sermon to prep on the plane ride home.
Sunday's coming, whether we want it or
That's
not.
right.
It's coming.
It's on the calendar.
And it can feel sometimes like Planning Center is this flesh-eating beast that you have to. I mean, almost the volcano that you have to ascend to the precipice and just throw bass players in to appease the Planning Center, and keep it from erupting. And it can feel that way a lot. But I think it's really important that within the culture, within the systems that you're building, intentionally building systems that counteract that. Intentionally building systems of celebration.
Yeah, talk to me about that.
I think that's one of the key systems that has to be present. Is a system for celebration. And that sounds awfully big, awfully lofty, but it can be as simple as intentionally planning to share stories about what's happening in the church, sharing testimonies. I'm in full-time ministry. I'm in the church office a lot. I interact with a larger cross-section of our church body than most people who just attend.
Yeah.
And it hit me somewhere along the way that I'm hearing way more of these stories and testimonies than the average team member, the average volunteer.
Or the person in the seat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a perfect example, this was a number of years ago before I moved. And during a Sunday morning worship set, it was just a normal Sunday, somebody that was in like the second row of church, like left the worship set abruptly, clearly emotional.
Yes.
And they were, I don't know, you've been in the room in Maryville, so you kind of know how close quarters that is.
Yeah,
so I was real aware that this person, I mean, they were maybe 8 feet from me.
Yeah.
And so I saw them leave abruptly, and I kind of didn't know what was going on, whatever. But on the back end of that, during the week, we found out that this person, they had been months earlier, they had been in a car accident, and they had whiplash and some kind of lingering problems with their neck, with their shoulders, and just chronic pain. And as they were standing there worshiping, all of a sudden they realized that they had their hands up in worship and their head tilted, and they're looking up at the sky in worship, and they were pain-free.
That's right.
And they couldn't do that before. And so they had experienced healing. Nobody's praying for them. It's not ministry time. Nobody's doing anything. And they experienced healing. Yeah. And they were overcome, and they just pieced out. And that kind of story, dude, that is gold to share with your team, especially the team that's on the platform when that happened 8 feet away from us.
But
with the whole worship team, like, guys, this is what we're facilitating.
This is why you get up at 6:30 in the morning.
This is why we play rock and roll in the morning.
Yeah, that's
This
right.
is it.
Yeah.
This is why we're doing, this is why you left your family on a Thursday night and came in and rehearsed. Yeah. This is why we put in all the work. This is why we did all the prep. This is why all these other systems exist.
Yeah, so when you say systems of celebration, you mean just schedule a moment to say what has happened.
Plan it. Plan it before you know the moment you're going to share. Like, before you know the story you're going to share, there's story time on the schedule. And then get the story to share. You will get a story. You don't have to fabricate anything. The Lord will move. You'll hear about something. It can be from the wider Vineyard network or from other churches. Just share a testimony of what God is doing, how God is moving in worship.
I like that.
Sharing values, sharing Vineyard values. So these are kind of built into our Thursday midweek rehearsal, where everybody's kind of plugging in and arriving and tuning up and making sure gain stage, all the things that have to happen before a rehearsal. And while that's all happening, I'm talking into the microphone and just kind of talking over the top of it and sharing some values, riffing on what's important here and why we're doing what we're doing.
That's right.
And celebrating that, because what gets celebrated gets repeated and gets talked about. And then we do other stuff that's more intentional. We have an appreciation banquet that's church-wide, where we invite everybody who serves in our church to come, and we have this big banquet and we just celebrate. But beyond that, we have an annual barbecue that's just the worship team, where whole families and kids, and we all get together and we barbecue and share food, and we hang out and play yard games. And we do that on Labor Day, and COVID has really disrupted that. But that's one of my favorite moments. And there's no agenda other than being together.
That's right.
And building relationships.
It does occur to me, there's this sense in which, you can build your systems. You can sometimes feel like you're just plugging holes in planning center or something. But it does occur to me that if you don't have some of this put together, that in the same way that if we just build systems that feel like they drive the bus or dehumanize us, having a lack of systems will eventually drive the bus and dehumanize us.
Correct.
Right. So
more so.
Yeah. Right.
More
so
dehumanizing.
Yeah. So even though when I asked that question, it maybe like makes you think. It makes you think, oh well, maybe Adam thinks this about that. But what I know is the other side of it is the more that we just don't have our expectations or schedules or our moments to celebrate put on the schedule somewhere, like it whatever we're doing, it's worse than the system that we were originally avoiding.
Absolutely. Along with the sharing testimonies, sharing successes, sharing stories, there's also sharing vision, talking about the dream. what it looks like to be a worshiping community, what it looks like to be a community of artists.
When do you do that?
I already mentioned Thursday rehearsal. I try and build those in a little bit into that.
So part of what you're saying is that your rehearsal is not just for learning those songs. It's like a culture moment. You're doing other stuff.
It's way more about culture than it is rehearsing. Like, Adam, we have 40 jams.
Yeah.
Everybody knows them.
Yeah, we already know the songs.
Like, we're going to touch them up and we're going to customize arrangements based on the team we're fielding that week.
Yeah.
And we're going to do some fun things. Hopefully, we're going to do some fun musical things and create little moments and talk about the specifics of this Sunday's liturgy.
Yeah.
So that's business to be done.
Yeah.
But really what we're talking about here is engineering some cultural moments, some culture building. And so that's built into Thursday. But then like one-on-one meetings, conversations in the lobby, coffee meetings, those are the moments when you can cast vision for a different way of life. There's so many artists who have almost given up on the idea of the life they dreamt about, right? And man, it could be for a lot of reasons. But if I can come alongside them and cast a little bit of vision and start describing the road that leads from here to there, man, it's profound.
Yeah, man, I love that. But I still love this idea of repurposing the rehearsal a little. Yeah, because that just feels so obvious to me. It's already in the memory of your team. You're going to do it. And yeah, it just feels like, you could take 4, 5, 10 minutes up front and go, hey, let's talk about this for a second. Hey, tune your guitar. Okay, let's talk about this for a second. Now we're going to have rehearsal.
Yeah, come on. When's the last time there was another piece of paper other than a song chart on everybody's music stand at rehearsal?
Yeah, never. The answer is never.
So print that bad boy out. Give them a visual aid that they can take home. That's notes on what we talked about.
Yeah.
That's not every week. I don't do that every week. But when I'm talking about something important that I want to really stick, and like I'm planting a flag here, take this home. And I'll give the same talk multiple weeks in a row on Thursday.
Because you want to get everybody.
Because I want to get everybody. Yeah. Everybody's got to cycle through. So here we go again.
Yeah. And one of your drummers hears it 3 times.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the way it goes. No, I love that, man. I think that's really simple, but it's actually really brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go granular here just for a second. Talk to me about onboarding a new member. Do you have a method for that?
Yeah. I think there's a pre-existing question or a prerequisite question to that. Which is having meaningful conversations with your pastor and maybe leadership team about the visions around who can serve and who can't.
Yeah.
Particularly on the church stage, it's different than being a greeter and making the coffee. Like we're going to put a microphone in front of your face and invite you to speak and sing to our church body during our gathering. And that's different in different contexts and church sizes, obviously, but I take that real seriously. Like that's spiritual authority in the room. And so having a conversation with your pastor, with your leadership team, what does that look like? And making it contextual to your church. And I think it can be different for your church. It doesn't have to look like my church. But at my church, you might not have to be walking with Jesus to play bass with me.
Yeah, that's a little different, right? You're not singing.
Yeah, that's a little different. If you have a microphone, I want you to know Jesus.
Yes.
I want you to be worshiping on your own. I want you to be like progressing, right? You don't have to be the full... Adam, I used to have a worship team binder. There was like a worship team covenant. So when somebody joined, they got this binder, and then the last page was like the covenant, and I signed it, and they signed it, and it was real serious. It was a 3-ring binder.
Yeah.
What I realized was that I did not qualify for my worship team.
Yeah, so you wrote a covenant that you didn't qualify
Correct.
for. Yeah.
The Apostle Paul didn't qualify.
Yeah, no one qualifies for this.
Thorn inside, you're out.
Yeah,
bro.
we're done.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
So it was real serious. I don't have that 3-ring binder anymore.
Yeah.
Like we've contextualized it and made it a little different, but there are things. So you got to have that conversation first, and you got to be clear on that on the front end before the most talented vocalist you've ever heard in your life comes to your church and asks you to join the team. You need to be real clear on all that. And then I have a really clear system I follow, and everybody does the same first step.
Yeah. What is the first step?
So the two most common things for me in my experience is somebody in church after service will come up and talk to me.
Yes.
Like, hey man, I play, I sing, I want to
Yeah.
do that. Or somebody on the team will tell me about their friend who wants to come. Maybe they're with them at the moment, or maybe they're just doing the recon work on the front end and telling me about a friend. Regardless of how I find out about the person or how they find out about me, step one is a form that is on our church website.
It's just on the website.
It's on the website.
Yep.
You could find it and fill out the worship team application for Vineyard Church of the Rockies.
And what kind of stuff
I would
is
be
on it?
thrilled if you would fill that out.
Yeah,
for
that's
me,
right.
Adam.
What kind of stuff is on there?
So it asks for their contact information, and then it asks some really basic questions like, tell me about your musical experience. Where have you played and where have you studied? And by asking it that way, you can tell an awful lot about a person. I mean, there's occasionally you meet Phineas, who's just in a bedroom until he wasn't, and then he
Comes to your church and
sweeps
shreds.
the awards, and like he's prodigy. But usually somebody has played and studied somewhere. So you can learn an awful lot about somebody's aptitude and skill level based on where they've played and studied without saying, rate your skill level 1 to 10.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, where have you played and studied? And then tell me your story with Jesus. Like, this is a church. You want to be on the church stage. Where are you at with Jesus?
Yeah.
Like, no wrong answers here. Just tell me your story with Jesus. And then that triggers this process. And the summary of the process is we go back and forth via email or text a couple of times before I even say, hey, let's get together. The reason why is going back to the scheduling thing. Like, I almost don't care how amazing you are. If you can't RSVP to the schedule, you cannot be a healthy member of our worship community. Like, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to RSVP to an email or a text. So we go back and forth 3 times, and I'm learning if they can adult, if they can just reply to a text or an email. And after that, they've answered a couple questions, and we've kind of got a grid. I've answered a couple questions, and okay, let's get together after church. And so then we'd have a 20-minute conversation face to face.
Yeah.
And I tell them, bring something you love to jam. So if it's a vocalist, what song do you love to sing? If it's a guitar player, what's the first song you play when you pull your guitar out of the case? That song. Like, bring that one song, and then here's a song from our top 40 that we do all the time at church. Here's the chart, here's the YouTube link. And so we're going to talk for like 12, 15 minutes, and we're going to jam for 5 to 8 minutes, whatever, after church. At that meeting, they get either, yes, this is amazing, come to rehearsal, sit in. Like, you're going to come meet some of the team, you're going to use in your monitor system, get the app, get all the things, get your feet under you. Like, maybe you sit in a couple times.
Before you play.
But you're coming to join the team.
Yeah.
So yes. Or no, this is not your jam. Let me help you find your jam. Or not yet.
Yeah.
No's are pretty rare. I mean, occasionally you have that first round American Idol person whose mama lied to him.
And they just can't sing.
And they told them they were awesome. And
yeah. How does that conversation go, Matt? Is it that doesn't sound fun?
No.
I mean, it's necessary. It doesn't sound fun.
It's necessary, but clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be clear about it and really, really kind and really, really loving. And, you know, I usually like profusely thank them for stepping out and like raising their hand and saying, I want to pursue this. I just thank them. Thank you. Like, I'd never want anybody to think that they wasted my time.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm really clear, like, this isn't going to work, but that doesn't mean you don't have a place to serve the body of Christ. So let's find that spot. So it is a no. It's a definite no.
Yeah.
But it's also a redirect. It's, hey, not this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's find your gift set. And there's a whole bunch behind that. I think that's a whole podcast episode you should do.
Yeah.
But that's the no. And then the not yet is, hey, there's stuff here.
Yeah, you just need to
I want to help you.
sharpen up a little bit.
I want to help you. Here's some resources. Here, let's meet again in 6 months.
Yeah.
Or 3 months or whatever.
And did I hear you say that if you give somebody a yes, that you're basically saying, come sit and practice a couple times, just get used to what it feels like to have the click in the in-ear and all that kind of stuff?
Yep. And in that time, I want to watch them interact with the band.
Yeah.
If you have a real strong culture, that worship culture will de-diva your team. Like it will not coexist with divas.
Yeah.
So if a diva shows up to join the team, they will quickly arrive at a fork in the road where they can enter into the culture that is established that will not budge.
Yeah.
Or the culture will expel them.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do a couple, that's rare, but it happens. So we're going to do a couple rehearsal sit-ins. We're going to let that play out. I'm going to watch them. If they're a bass player, I want to watch them interact with a couple of our drummers of varying ages, right? I want to watch them interact with the rhythm section. If they're frontline, I want to watch them try and communicate an arrangement idea or whatever, Yeah. So we're going to do that. We're going to sit in a couple times. And it just, I don't want them to be deer in headlights on their first Sunday. I want them to have a comfort level as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's great because, sometimes people have not ever used in-ears or
click or...
And the truth is, every single room sounds different. Just the stage, the way it feels. Like some places, you don't really feel the drums at all. And
Others,
places,
your feet are rattling.
Yeah, you feel like, there's something coming apart.
There's something to that. And the distance from congregation members, distance from other team members, stage size and layout, all that stuff just matters.
That sociology. Yeah. And that creates something we do have to work through. I love that.
And usually it takes a time or two for somebody to really bring themselves. The first time they sit in a rehearsal, they're just kind of putting their toe in. Yeah. And they're not bringing themselves. Yeah. And what I want is for them to bring themselves.
That's right.
So they have to learn to trust that.
Yeah, that's great. That's so good. I love that. Dude, Matt, I feel like we covered a lot of ground here.
We made some progress.
That's good. Well, hey, here's what I would love. I would love if you would maybe would you just pray a prayer for all of us Vineyard worship leaders and pastors out there? Would you just pray some kind of a God, help us care for our team's prayer? Yeah. That'd be cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Father, thank you that you love us and that you created the world that we inhabit with order, with organization, with structure. And you've put us right down in the middle of your structure and you've called us into this thing. And Holy Spirit, right now I pray for anyone who's listening, but especially musicians. God, would you move us towards administration, move us towards organization? Would you put in our minds, in our spirits, this unshakable vision for life with administration, the fruit, the trellis, the space in our life? God, I pray that the fruit of good administration in worship would be rest, would be peace, like your shalom peace. The fruit would be beautiful music and songs and creativity. Lord, that we would be able to live not out of hurry, not out of scramble, but that we would be able to live in your peace and in the kind of green space that you invite us to. Lord, I pray that we would be able to enter into that space and co-create with you. And that it would be a blessing, Father, to the musicians in our churches, to the technicians in our churches, that it would be a blessing to our congregations. Lord, that you would use it in our own lives. Let it facilitate longevity and steadiness. Lord, let it bear fruit in really unexpected and really beautiful ways. It's in Jesus' name that we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Matt, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam.
All right, everybody. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Coram here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.